He didn't speak when he entered the room, just locked the door behind him like there was no turning back. The sheets were cold. My heart was louder than the silence. And when he touched me, slow, deliberate, unrelenting, I realized this wasn't about love. Not yet. This was about control. And the contract we both signed with trembling hands. If you're still reading, something tells me you're not done. Hit like, subscribe, and stay with us. Because the story only gets deeper from here. I used to believe peace smelled like cinnamon. On cold mornings in Vermont, I'd wake to the quiet hum of my mother's voice drifting from the kitchen. She always sang when she baked, off-key, forgetful of half the lyrics, but it filled the house with something softer than warmth, something like safety. That morning, the kitchen was quiet. The heater clanked somewhere in the walls. Outside, snow hovered over the hills like a secret no one wanted to speak aloud. I sat behind the flower shop's counter, flipping through the mess of receipts in the drawer beneath the register. Our last wedding order had cleared just enough to cover this month's electricity. Maybe groceries. But that was all. The drawer, stuck halfway. I tugged harder. Something inside caught. I reached deeper, past an old invoice pad, and my fingers brushed against something firm. Not paper. It was a cream envelope. Thick, sealed, and worn at the edges like it had been handled. Too many times, and opened never. I stared at it. It didn't have a name. No label. Just a thin strip of yellowed tape across the flap. My thumb hovered there. A small voice told me to put it back. Pretend I hadn't seen it. Instead, I peeled the tape back. What I found made my stomach knot, so hard I had to steady myself against the counter. Inside was a folded legal contract, my name typed clean across the top. Hannah Taylor. Loan amount, $850,000. Date issued, March 3rd, 4 years ago. The date made my breath catch. That was my 18th birthday. The signature at the bottom was mine. At least it was supposed to be. The ink had my name, but I had never signed a loan in my life, let alone one that could swallow everything we owned twice over. And then I saw it, just above the signature line, CT, my mother's initials. I froze. No, not her. Not the woman who taught me to knead bread and face mistakes, who always said, "Debt is never just money, Hannah. It's weight." I flipped the envelope over. Another piece of paper slipped. Out. Smaller. Folded in thirds. Written in cramped, shaky handwriting I hadn't seen since I was 11. My father's. Claire. If this ever comes back, I'm sorry. I didn't know how deep it went. If you have no way out, find Ethan Grayson. Read the name 3 times. My blood went cold. Ethan Grayson. I'd heard it in whispers, on late-night news, murmured through headlines I never paid attention to. He was a real estate tycoon, a man known for building empires and razing others to the ground. The kind of man people never met, only feared. Why would my father write his name? Why would my mother hide it? The shop suddenly felt too small, the ceiling lower than it had been minutes ago. I shoved the papers back in the envelope and stepped into the back room, where the air was thick with wilting lilies and dried lavender. My mother was bent over a vase, tucking stems into place with care she no longer had the strength for. She looked older than she had last week, the kind of tired you can't fix with sleep. "Can you close up early?" she asked, not looking up. "I was thinking we could make soup, like when you were little." My throat locked. I wanted to ask her. I wanted to hold up the envelope like a weapon and demand answers. But all I said was, "Sure, I'll finish up." Turned before she could see my eyes. That night, after she went to bed, I packed a small bag, 1 pair of jeans, 2 sweaters, the silver ring she gave me for my 16th birthday, my toothbrush, an old photo of us standing on the front porch, arms wrapped around each other like we had the whole world ahead of us. I didn't leave a note. I couldn't. Because I didn't know what I'd write. because I was afraid I'd change my mind. The bus station, I handed over every dollar I had. Crumpled bills, mostly singles. The clerk behind the glass barely glanced at me. "One way?" she asked. I nodded. "That'll get you as far as Manhattan." The bus smelled like wet fabric and stale coffee. I sat in the back, hugging my bag like it could protect me. Outside, the world blurred past in streaks of snow and sodium light. Gas stations, exit signs, darkness swallowing one town after another. But inside my chest, every thought screamed. Who was Ethan Grayson? What had my father done? What had my mother sacrificed to keep me safe? And most of all, what would I have to give now to pay for it? I didn't sleep. I watched the frost bloom and disappear on the window pane. My breath left little clouds in the air. Somewhere past midnight, I whispered his name out loud, just once, Ethan Grayson. Like a curse, like a prophecy. And I didn't know it then, but the moment I said it, everything in my life began to change. The moment I stepped off the bus, Manhattan hit me like a punch in the chest. It wasn't just the cold or the size of it all. It was the pace. The way people moved like they were being chased by invisible deadlines. No one looked up. No one looked back. Every step felt like it had somewhere more important to be. And me? I stood there on the sidewalk, like a ghost, with a canvas bag and no clue where to go. I pulled the envelope from my coat, fingers stiff with cold. The address was printed on the back of one of the pages. I memorized it before I left Vermont. Grayson Tower. It sounded like fiction, like something out of a novel that didn't belong to someone like me. The taxi driver raised an eyebrow when I told him where I was going. He didn't ask questions, just turned up the radio and drove like the city owed him time he was never going to get back. Grayson Tower didn't need to impress. It simply existed. 52 stories of steel and glass that seemed to grow out of the sidewalk like a monument to silence. The name was etched in black marble at the base. Not gold, not silver. Just stone, dark, and final. Inside, the lobby was so quiet I could hear my own breath. A man in a tailored suit stood behind the front desk. His fingers moved over a tablet with clockwork efficiency. He didn't glance up until I was close enough for the air to shift. "I'm here to see Mr. Ethan Grayson," I said. He didn't blink. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but tell him my name is Hannah Taylor. My mother is Claire Taylor." Something flickered in his eyes. He picked up the phone, said something too quiet to catch, then nodded once. 52nd floor, penthouse conference room. The elevator ride was silent. No music. Just the hush of machinery and the soft rise of numbers glowing above the door. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked pale, uncertain, out of place. By the time I reached the top floor, my palms were sweating. The hallway smelled faintly of coffee and something sterile, like money that didn't like to be touched. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined the walls, offering a view of the city so vast it looked unreal. At the far end stood a man, tall, still, facing the glass like it held the answers to questions no one dared ask. He didn't turn when I walked in. "Name Hannah," I said quietly. "Hannah Taylor." Nothing, not even a twitch. I hated the silence. It stretched, cold and stiff, wrapping around my shoulders like ice. "I found the contract," I added. "I'm here to settle the debt." That made him move. He turned slowly, and for the first time, I saw his face. Ethan Grayson looked exactly the way power should. Clean lines, cold eyes, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. He didn't seem surprised to see me. "You're 4 years late," he said. I flinched. "I didn't know. Not until last week." "Your mother knew." He stepped closer. His voice wasn't raised, but it filled the room. Heavy. Final. "Your father took the money. Your mother buried the truth. And now here you are, offering what they couldn't pay, I tried to hold my ground, but my knees weren't listening. What do you want from me? A wife. On paper. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a meeting. It was a transaction. I didn't sign anything. I whispered. No. But your name is on it. And I've honored my part of the deal. The money's gone. The interest is mine. What happens if I say no? Then the debt lives. And it drags you down with it. His eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. You can walk out that door, but the people you love won't outrun what follows. I looked down at my hands. I thought about my mother's voice, her humming in the kitchen, her hands trembling when she poured tea. How tired she looked. How much of that tiredness was mine without me even knowing. I swallowed hard. I'll sign. He didn't smile. He didn't thank me. He reached for a folder on the table, slid a single-page contract across the glass surface. The paper was thick. The ink was cold. Every line was precise. Marriage in exchange for full loan forgiveness. No conjugal expectations. No shared assets. No emotional obligations. Just a signature, a date, and the fine print of surrender. I picked up the pen. My name came out in stiff, slanted letters. A child's hand pretending to be a woman's. He signed beneath me. Quick. Efficient. Like he was closing on another skyscraper. We were married that afternoon. In a glass room on the top floor with no flowers, no vows, no guests. The officiant read from a small book without looking at either of us. Ethan stood beside me, silent, unmoving. His hand never touched mine. His gaze stayed fixed ahead. When it was done, the officiant left with a nod. Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out a small wooden box. He handed it to me without a word. Inside was a simple gold band. No diamonds, no shine. Just 3 words engraved on the inside. For better or worse. He didn't put it on my finger. He didn't look at me. He turned and walked out, leaving the room and the silence. Behind him. Grayson Tower didn't feel like a home. It didn't even feel like a place someone lived. It felt curated. Designed for impressions, not comfort. Like everything inside it had been chosen for how it looked, not how it felt. I followed Ethan through the glass doors of the penthouse. The space stretched long and cold. White marble floors, sharp chrome edges, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city but made you feel like you didn't belong in it. He didn't speak, just pointed down a hallway. That's your room. I stood there for a second, not moving. He didn't look back. You can do whatever you want with the rest of the place. Just stay out of my way. Then he disappeared into the opposite wing. The door closed behind him with a soft, final click. The bedroom was beautiful and empty. Soft gray walls. A bed that looked like it had never been slept in. Not a single picture. Not a wrinkle in the comforter. It smelled like lavender and something colder underneath. Like money trying to wear a perfume. I sat on the edge of the bed and took off my coat. My fingers trembled. The ring box was still in my pocket, unopened. I pulled it out and stared at it for a long time. I didn't throw it away. I didn't put it on either. I just left it on the nightstand, like a question I didn't want to answer. Days passed. Or maybe it was only hours. I lost track quickly. Ethan was always gone before I woke up. I never heard him come back. The penthouse was too quiet. It made me feel like I was haunting it. Like I'd died the moment I signed that contract, and this was where I'd been buried. I tried to keep busy. I cooked, though I never knew if he ate. I cleaned, though nothing ever got messy. I rearranged the books in the living room, just to have something to do, then put them back exactly as they were. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't play music. I didn't call my mother. I didn't know how to explain to her what I'd become. Sometimes, I just walked from room to room, fingers trailing over smooth glass and polished steel, searching for something human beneath the shine. I never found it. On the 3rd morning, I found a letter wedged between 2 books on the bottom shelf of the office. It was old. The paper yellowed. The ink faded in places. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was addressed simply. Ethan. I didn't mean to read it, but the moment I saw the first line, I couldn't stop. Ethan, if you're reading this, I've failed. You again. I thought I could shield you from the worst of me. I thought building something would be enough. But I see now, you've built walls I never meant to teach you. Don't let the money keep you cold. Don't let my mistakes become your legacy. You're still my son. You're still the boy who wanted to grow orchids on the roof. Forgive me if you can. Dad, I folded the letter and sat there for a long time. My hands trembled, but not from fear. I knew that ache. I knew what it meant to carry silence through years like it was armor. I knew what it cost to bury something before it had a chance to bloom. That night, I heard footsteps outside my door. I held my breath. They stopped, stayed, then faded again. He never knocked. He never came in. But for the first time, he didn't walk past like I didn't exist. And somehow, that was worse. The next morning, I made breakfast. Not because I thought he'd eat it, but because I didn't know what else to do. Bacon, eggs, toast, coffee. I set 2 plates on the kitchen island. I waited. The food went cold. I wrapped it up, cleaned the counters, and threw it all away. Still, the next day, I did it again. By the 4th day, I stopped using 2 plates. I just ate in silence, 1 fork in one hand, the other clenched tightly in my lap. The silence had teeth. It wasn't peaceful. It gnawed at me, bit by bit. That afternoon, I walked into the study again. I stood in front of the shelf where I found the letter. I don't know why I did it, but I placed it back exactly where I found it. Neatly. Respectfully. Maybe I wanted him to know someone had read it. Maybe I wanted to remind him that someone still could. That night, he was home. I heard the door. His footsteps. He moved past the kitchen, paused, then walked to the study. I didn't follow. I stood in the hallway, heart thudding. 10 minutes passed. Then, 15. Then the light in the study went dark. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized something had shifted. Not between us, but within him. Something inside Ethan Grayson was beginning to crack. Not enough to see through yet, but enough to hear. The lavender was small, dried, tied with a white ribbon. I found it on the kitchen counter one morning, right where I'd left my tea mug the night before. It hadn't been there when I went to bed. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't store-bought. The stems were uneven, the bow clumsy. It didn't look like something from Grayson Towers' curated perfection. It looked like something human. I reached for it with careful fingers. The petals crumbled slightly at the touch, releasing a soft, familiar scent. Lavender. The same kind my mother used to hang above the kitchen window back home, to dry slowly through the Vermont winters. I closed my eyes and breathed it in. For the first time in days, the silence didn't feel so sharp. Ethan didn't say anything that morning. He never did. But when he walked through the kitchen, he paused beside the counter. His eyes flicked to the lavender, then to me, then away again. A second. Maybe 2. Then he was gone. I didn't ask him if he'd left it. I didn't need to. Later, that day, I walked to the market 3 blocks down, the one tucked under the overpass where no one looked at each other. I bought eggs, bread, a lemon, and a small bundle of rosemary wrapped in brown paper. Back home, I made soup. Not just something hot to fill the silence, but something real. Something I used to make with my mother on Sundays. I minced the garlic fine, added the rosemary toward the end, let the scent bloom until it filled the kitchen with something softer than survival. I set 2 bowls on the island. He didn't come. I ate alone. But the next morning, there was a faint trace of rosemary in the air, and an extra spoon in the sink. It was something. The days that followed moved slowly, like light through frosted glass. I kept cooking. Small meals, quiet flavors. And each morning, I'd find some trace that he'd eaten. I never saw him do it. But he no longer avoided the kitchen entirely. Sometimes I'd hear the faint clink of a dish being rinsed, a chair being pushed back. Sometimes when I came out for tea, the light over the stove would already be on. These weren't conversations, not even acknowledgments, but they were gestures. And when silence is all you've had, gestures are louder than words. I started writing again. Nothing long, just lists, thoughts, a recipe I wanted to remember. I wrote it on a notepad I found in one of the drawers and left it on the fridge without thinking. The next morning, someone had added a note in different handwriting. You forgot time. Just 3 words. But they made me smile, despite myself. I found myself spending more time in the library. His study, technically. The only room that seemed like someone had once loved it. Not lived in it, not used it, but loved it. It was where I found the letter from his father. I didn't touch it again. I didn't need to. Sometimes I'd sit in the chair by the window and just watch the city. Ethan came in once. He didn't speak. He didn't ask me to leave. He just stood by the bookshelves, reading something with his back to me. When he left, the room didn't feel colder. It felt paused. Like we were both holding our breath and hadn't quite decided whether to exhale. One night, I passed him in the hallway. Neither of us spoke. But for the first time, our eyes met. It wasn't long, barely a moment. But in that glance, something shifted. His gaze wasn't cold that time. It wasn't soft either, but it was aware, and that was new. That weekend, I baked. Nothing fancy, just lemon bread, the kind my mother used to make when things felt heavy. The smell pulled at something inside me. As I pulled it from the oven, I felt suddenly foolish, sentimental. Like I was trying too hard for someone who hadn't asked for anything. I left the loaf on the counter anyway. That night, I heard the sound of a knife on crust. In the morning, only 2 slices were left. The next day, there was a note on the counter in his sharp, blocky handwriting. Good bread, too much lemon. I wrote back beneath it, that's how I like it. When I returned that afternoon, the note was gone, but the next night, I found a tiny glass jar on the counter. Inside, vanilla beans. Fresh. Rare. Expensive. He hadn't signed it. He didn't need to. That night, as I stood by the window, looking out over the city, I found myself whispering words I hadn't said aloud in a long time. I don't know what this is, I said quietly to the glass, but I hope it's not nothing. Behind me, the apartment hummed with quiet. Not silence, just stillness. And for the first time since I arrived, I didn't feel invisible in it. I heard the door unlock before I saw him. It was late. So late the city outside had quieted to a distant hum. I sat up in bed, still wearing the pale nightgown I'd unpacked from Vermont, the fabric too thin for the chilled air of the penthouse. My feet were bare against the cold floor. I hadn't expected him. The door closed behind him. With a soft click, he didn't speak. He didn't hesitate. He walked toward me with slow, deliberate steps, and for the first time since I arrived, I felt like the contract we signed wasn't just paper. It was alive, breathing, looming. Ethan, I whispered. It's late. What do you want? He didn't answer. His silence was its own kind of answer. When he reached the bed, he stood over me, eyes unreadable. I clutched the blanket to my chest. I've been patient, he said finally. His voice was low, controlled. But patience was never part of the deal. I didn't think you didn't think I'd collect? He pulled the blanket from my hands. Not violently, just firmly, like he wasn't asking. I drew back against the headboard. I haven't done this before, I said. I've never... I know. His voice didn't soften. He reached for the strap of my nightgown, slid it off my shoulder. I shivered, not from cold, from knowing. His touch was careful but not kind, measured but not gentle, as if he were inspecting something valuable before taking it. You're scared, he said. I couldn't speak. Good. He pressed me into the mattress. His mouth brushed my neck. Not tender, not cruel. Just a warning. I turned my face away. I won't break, I whispered, though I didn't believe it. You already did, he murmured, almost to himself. His hand slid down, gathering the fabric of my nightgown, exposing me inch by inch until I was bare beneath him. The air bit at my skin. My breath hitched. Then he looked at me, all of me, and still said nothing. His touch was slow at first, exploratory, like he was cataloging something he owned. He moved with purpose, tracing the inside of my thigh, then higher until his fingers slid between my legs. I gasped. My body recoiled on instinct. He didn't stop, didn't ask. His fingers moved with practiced pressure, parting skin, searching for softness where fear made everything clench. He found resistance. Pushed anyway. You're tense, he muttered. You're not exactly making it easy. I'm not supposed to. He pressed 2 fingers inside me. The invasion was immediate. My body rejected it. I cried out. More from the shock than pain, though pain wasn't far behind. My hips twisted, trying to escape, but there was nowhere to go. He was already bracing me down with the weight of a single arm. You'll adjust, he said, voice flat. He withdrew. My chest heaved, ribs caving around breath that didn't want to stay. He stood, undressing with mechanical precision. A belt, a shirt, a watch, trousers. Movements too clean, too smooth for what was about to happen. Then he was back, bare and certain. He climbed over me. One knee, then another. His body blocked out the ceiling light. Spread your legs. I didn't. Move. He pushed my knees apart himself. Then he entered me. One hard thrust. I bit down on a scream. It tore through me. Burning, stretching, bruising. Every nerve lit like fire. My fists clenched in the sheets. He didn't stop. He moved with precision, not passion. Each thrust calculated. Deep. Slow. Unrelenting. You're mine, he said, through his teeth. My nails dug into the mattress. I didn't cry out again. I bit my lip until it bled. You signed, he growled. You agreed. Tears leaked down the sides of my face. Not from just the pain, but from the knowing, because he was right, and that broke me more than anything. It didn't last long, and somehow, it lasted forever. When it ended, he didn't speak. He stood, dressed, button by button, layer by layer. He fastened his watch. He left the room without a backward glance. The door clicked shut behind him. I lay there, shaking. My body ached in places I hadn't known could ache. The bedsheets were damp with sweat, blood, and silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the ceiling and wondered when I had stopped being a person and started being a price. In the bathroom, I ran hot water until steam coated. The mirror. I stepped in and scrubbed. Hard. My skin turned red. My scalp stung. I stayed under the water until my legs trembled. It didn't help. I still felt him. On my skin. Under it. Inside the places water couldn't reach. When I finally crawled back into bed, the sky outside had started to pale. I curled, onto my side, knees to my chest, and clutched the ring box I'd never opened. For once, I wished I hadn't signed anything at all. I woke to silence, not the soft kind, like snow falling or pages turning. This one was hollow. A silence that echoed off walls and whispered in corners. My body ached. I didn't need to look to know why. The sheets were still wrinkled. My skin was still tender. And Ethan was gone. I pulled myself from the bed slowly, every movement reminding me of the night before. The shower scalded. I scrubbed until my arms went numb, but the weight of what happened clung to me like smoke. Down the hall, the penthouse was still. No footsteps, no murmurs, no evidence of anyone else. It was as if I had imagined him, as if the man from last night had been a fever dream stitched together from fear and ink on paper. But the ache between my thighs said otherwise. I brewed tea out of habit. The kettle hissed, and I watched the steam rise like a ghost trying to leave the room. I held the mug in both hands and sat at the kitchen island, staring at nothing. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number. A soft ring. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Hello? Hannah? My breath caught. Mom? Her voice was thin. Weaker than I remembered, like paper crumpling at the edges. I didn't want to call, she said. I didn't want to. Worry you. What's wrong? I stood so fast the chair tipped behind me. It's my heart, she whispered. The doctor says, it's time. The next sound was a sob. Mine. I'm coming, I said, grabbing the nearest coat. I'll be there today. I didn't pack much, just enough. My hands shook as I zipped the bag. I didn't leave a note this time. Didn't bother with explanations. I walked through the penthouse one last time. Rooms cold with wealth and untouched. Beauty. I paused in the doorway of the library. The orchids still faced the sun. Downstairs, I caught a cab to the train station. It was just past noon, and raining. The driver didn't speak, neither did I. The platform was half empty. Wind whipped through the open station, tugging at the hem of my coat. I stood there, ticket in hand, heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with grief. I didn't know if I was running from something or to someone, maybe both. The train screeched into view. I stepped toward the edge. Hannah, I froze. My name cracked through the air like a whip. I turned. Ethan was running. He was out of breath. No jacket, hair damp from the rain. He looked human, like the walls he lived behind had finally cracked. He reached me just as the doors opened. He grabbed my wrist. Don't go, he said, chest rising with ragged breaths. I have to, I whispered. My mother. I know. His voice broke. I know you have to go, but don't leave me behind. The train called out again, louder this time. My heart beat in time with it. Why? I asked. Rain slid down his face, mingling with the faint cut on his cheek I hadn't noticed before. Because when you walked out of that room, I couldn't breathe, he said. Because I looked at what I did, and I hated who I was. I stared at him. You should. He swallowed hard. I do. Then softer. But I want to be more than the man who broke you. His voice wasn't smooth now. It cracked in the middle, rough around the edges. Honest. I won't ask you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. The train doors hissed, warning. But I need to try. I need to be where you are. Even if it's just to hold your mother's hand while you sleep. Even if it means you never touch me again. I studied him, wet, shaking, eyes raw. The train conductor shouted last call, and for the first time since I stepped into his world, I saw something in him that scared me more than power ever could. Regret. Real, unpolished regret. I stepped back. Then prove it. I didn't ask him to follow. I just stepped onto the train. He didn't hesitate. He stepped in behind me. We didn't sit together. He stood near the door, hands in his pockets, watching the rain streak across the window. I sat, in the third row, facing forward, holding my coat tight to my chest. But when the train pulled away from the station, something shifted between us. Not forgiveness, not healing, but possibility. And for the first time in weeks, that was enough. Michigan smelled like wet leaves and memory. The taxi pulled up to the house just after midnight. The porch light was on. The old swing creaked in the wind, just like it always had. It was strange how something could look exactly the same, and yet feel completely different. Ethan stood behind me as I fumbled with the key. I hadn't said much during the ride. Neither had he. But his presence had been steady, his silence no longer sharp. Inside, everything smelled of home, lavender and old wood. A trace of cinnamon in the curtains that hadn't been washed in a while. The kind of quiet that hummed instead of echoed. "Stay here," I whispered. He nodded, dropped his bag by the door, and sank onto the couch like he didn't expect comfort. Only rest. I walked down the hall and opened the bedroom door. My mother turned her head toward the sound. Her face lit up, weak but still warm. "Hannah," she breathed. I knelt beside her and took her hand. "I'm here, Mom." She nodded, as if that was all she needed to keep breathing. For the next hour, I sat with her. I wiped her brow, fluffed her pillow, told her about the train, the rain, the toast Ethan had made. I didn't mention the contract, or the pain, or the silence, only the small things. The human ones. Eventually, her eyes drifted closed. I stepped back into the hallway. Ethan hadn't moved. He sat there in the dark, hands clasped, staring at the floor. "She's asleep," I said. He looked up. "Do you want me to leave?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked to the kitchen and turned on the kettle. "Tea?" I asked. He blinked once, then nodded. I made 2 cups. We sat at the small table, knees bumping beneath it. Neither of us said anything, but we stayed. In the morning, he was already up. He'd found my mother's chipped mug, the one with the blue flowers that had long since faded. He filled it carefully, not over the brim, not too little. His movements were cautious, like he was aware of how much space he took up. "She'll need help sitting up today," I said quietly. He nodded, no questions, just followed me down the hall when it was time. My mother's eyes fluttered open again. She looked at me, then beyond me, to the man who now stood at her bedside, uncertain and out of place. "You must be Mr. Grayson," she said, voice faint but pointed. He stepped forward, almost bowed his head. "Yes, ma'am." "You look taller than I imagined," she added with a weak smile. He didn't know how to answer that, so he said nothing. But when she struggled to sit up, he moved without being asked, one hand behind her back, the other lifting her with care I didn't know he possessed. She winced. He stilled. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. She nodded. "Been worse." We helped her eat in silence. When she was done, she leaned back into the pillows and closed her eyes again. Later, Ethan repaired the back step that had creaked since I was 15. He replaced a light bulb on the porch. Took out the trash without being asked. He didn't talk much. But every action was a question. Can I stay? Can I be useful? Can I matter here? I didn't answer aloud. But I let him. That night, I sat by the window while he fixed the squeaky screen door. The stars were out, fewer than in Vermont, more than in New York. He came inside, wiping his hands on a towel, and leaned against the kitchen counter. "Your mother is strong," he said. "She always has been. You take after her." I didn't know what to say to that, so I asked instead, "Why did you follow me?" He met my eyes. "Because I've built everything out of stone, and it's never once made me feel alive." The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the old fridge. "You said I broke you," he continued. "And I did." He exhaled, jaw tight. "But this place, your mother, this house, you. Somehow, you didn't break. You bent. You bent until it almost tore you apart, and you still got on a train. You still came home. I looked down at my hands. I don't know how to forgive you. You don't have to. He stepped closer, carefully. But I want to start with telling the truth. The real truth. He placed something on the table, between us. His ring, the one he wore like a sentence. The contract's void, he said. I called my lawyer yesterday. No more debt. No more signatures. No more pretending. I stared at it, then at him. Why would you do that? Because I want you to choose me, he said, and I want the right to earn it. I didn't answer. Not that night. But when he reached for the kettle, I didn't stop him. And when he poured 2 cups, I didn't look away. We drank our tea in silence. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was full of everything we hadn't said. Yet. Spring came late that year. The snow melted in slow, soggy patches across the front lawn. The garden, beds stayed quiet, stubborn beneath the soil. But the air began to soften. And so did we. Ethan stayed. What started as a weekend stretched into a week. Then another. He never asked how long he could remain. He just kept fixing things. The broken railing on the porch, the peeling paint on the back door, the shutter that banged against the siding every time the wind picked up. He never said much. But he was there, and over time, the silence between us stopped being something to fear. Some nights, I'd find him sitting on the porch, elbows on his knees, watching the trees sway in the dusk. One night, I joined him. We didn't speak at first. Just listened to the wind, the hum of a world bigger than both of us. Then he said quietly, I never knew how to stay. I looked at him. I never knew how to leave. He smiled. Just barely. Somewhere between us, something cracked open. Not loudly, just enough to let the air in. Mornings became easier. He started keeping sugar in his coffee, just like I did. I started folding his coat over the arm of the couch instead of hanging it by the door. We moved around each other in the kitchen like we'd been doing it for years, passing spoons, sharing quiet, breathing the same space without walls between us. He carried groceries without asking. I laughed once. Really laughed. He didn't say anything, but I caught the flicker of a smile as he turned away. One afternoon, I came back from the pharmacy to find him kneeling in the garden, soil streaking his sleeves, hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. He looked up, brushing his hands on his jeans. Your mom said she always wanted tulips by the porch. I blinked at him. You don't know anything about planting. No, he admitted, but I can learn. He smiled, shy, earnest, and it undid something inside me I didn't know I'd been guarding. My mother's health didn't improve, but she seemed lighter. She watched us with eyes that knew too much and said very little. One evening, I caught her watching Ethan as he carried a tray to her room. She reached out and caught his hand. You're trying, she said softly. He didn't speak, just nodded. That matters, she whispered, and patted his hand once before letting go. That night, he found me in the kitchen. He leaned in the doorway, watching as I dried the last plate. Your mom said something kind to me. She does that, he hesitated. I'm afraid I won't be enough for the version of you who's healing. I put the towel down. You don't have to be enough, I said. You just have to be honest. He stepped closer, unsure, hands tucked into his pockets, like a boy. Then I should tell you something. He pulled a folded document from his jacket. I recognized the legal seal. I filed to dissolve the marriage license. Officially, legally, we're no longer bound. I looked up. He didn't blink. I don't want to be someone you're tied to because of debt. I took the paper from him, held it lightly. And what if I want to choose you anyway? His voice cracked. Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worth that. On the last day of April, we stood on the porch again. The air smelled of damp earth and early lilacs. Birds had returned to the trees. The sun was warm on our shoulders. He held out a small box. Not velvet, not gold, just wood. Inside, a simple silver band, etched on the inside. No contract, just choice. I didn't cry. I didn't question. I slid it onto my finger, wrapped my hand in his, and leaned my head against his shoulder. We didn't need vows. We'd lived them. My mother passed quietly. One morning, her breath slowing like the turning of a page. I was holding her hand. Ethan stood at the foot of the bed. We didn't speak, but she opened her eyes one last time and looked at both of us. There was peace there, like she finally believed I wasn't alone. We buried her beneath the willow tree behind the house. He dug the grave himself. Not because anyone asked him to, because that's what staying meant. We stayed in the house through the summer. He took calls from the porch. I reopened the flower shop down the road. We cooked dinner together most nights. Sometimes we argued, quietly, honestly. He never raised his voice. I never had to ask for space. One evening, long after the heat had drained from the day, we stood in the doorway, watching fireflies blink across the yard. The porch light buzzed above us. He reached for my hand, and I let him. I used to think love was possession, he said. A contract. Control. And now? He looked down at me. Now I know it's choice. Every day, every quiet, stubborn, hard-earned choice. I leaned into him. Then stay. I'm already home. And when the porch light flickered on, above us, I realized, so was I. If this story stirred something in you, if it made you pause, reflect, or feel just a little less alone, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more stories that linger long after the last word. Your support means more than you know. I'll see you in the next one.